Thanks for joining me on Life in Surround for this very special episode. I have with me over Zoom the head of music at immersiveaudioalbum.com, Jonathan Cornell. And he is also a moderator over at quadrophonicquad.com, which is where I first became aware of just his online presence, some of his taste in multi-channel, the opinions that he had to offer, and then you started doing reviews. And then I became somehow aware of your association at immersiveaudioalbum.com. So I want to give you a chance to say hi to everybody and maybe just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself.
Hello. Well, like you, I was someone who just, happened to be introduced to this whole world of multi-channel music. Mainly was through my dad. Back in the 70s, he had a quadraphonic setup and a large collection of, SQ CD4 vinyl. Then in the 2000s, he had bought a bunch of, SACD and DVD audio discs. So that was sort of always something that was around the house. And I would say I really got into it maybe around 10 years ago now, starting to collect, some of the new stuff that was being released, like the King Crimson and Jethro Tull discs, and just kind of happened to get more into it from there. As far as the IAA side of it goes, I wasn't involved in the founding of the site. Actually the original purpose of it was to promote just one artist's album. There was a record released around 2017 or 18 called The Savior by A Bad Think. You might remember it. It was
Yeah,
mixed by Bob Clearmountain.
yeah, I've heard it. It's a good album.
Yeah, great record. It was released on Blu-ray as well. But the what had happened was the singer in A Bad Think, really it's his sort of solo project where he plays almost all the instruments. His name's Michael Marquardt. He had been working with a company called Deviant Labs to do some marketing and promotion, that kind of thing. And they had set up the website just sort of a way to market his album, just to sell this one particular thing. And the idea was a campaign to get a nomination for the Grammy for Best Immersive Audio Album. So that's why the site is called immersiveaudioalbum.com. And sort of through this grassroots campaign, we did manage to get him that Grammy nomination. And the site just kind of grew from there, organically, people asking us for a place to sell their albums. So
Okay.
if it's not clear to sort of go into it, I probably should have said this first. But the idea behind IAA is a digital marketplace to sell surround music files. Kind of like how on Bandcamp you can buy a stereo multi-channel download. A stereo download. On IAA we sell albums, in 5.1 as FLACs, or in Dolby Atmos in something called an MKV file with Dolby True HD, and we can get into all the formats and things. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you covered what immersiveaudioalbum.com is. It's a marketplace where you can buy multi-channel downloads.
Yes.
Do albums also come with stereo and other options, or is this exclusively for multi-channel customers?
For the most part, it has been exclusively multi-channel. We're starting to toy with the idea of including binaural files in the downloads.
Yeah, I got a binaural
Um,
file in my download of the new Alison Krauss and Union Station album.
yes. Without sort of getting into too much of the specifics because it's sort of complicated, but there are different versions of binaural for Atmos. There's the Apple system, which is spatial audio, they call it. And there's the genuine Dolby binaural, which is a two-channel file that has all the cues baked into it. So when you're listening to a Atmos mix on Apple Music using AirPods, it's using a proprietary process where it's actually processing a multi-channel file in real time. So in most cases, a lot of people don't get to hear the real Dolby binaural that has the near, mid, and far metadata tags. I think the only way you can hear that is if you listen to an Atmos mix on Tidal using headphones. Tidal and Amazon use Dolby's binaural, and Apple uses their own system. So you can, using the Dolby renderer, which is the piece of software that you mix through in the studio to make an Atmos mix, you can have it export literally just a stereo file. If you were to open it in Audacity, you would just see two channels, but you can listen to it in binaural using any pair of headphones. So we're starting to include those in the downloads. Like you mentioned, the Alison Krauss record included one. And I think going forward, that should be sort of a standard issue thing.
So let's talk about what is the most exciting goings on at immersiveaudioalbum.com right now.
Well, sort of a lot of my main responsibility for the site is to recruit artists and labels and get them to sell their music on our site. So I think as all your viewers know, like the whole landscape of our hobby has changed over the last few years. It used to be the only way you could release a surround album was on a disc, whether it's a DVD or a Blu-ray for 5.1. For Atmos, you can only do a Blu-ray. But it's sort of changed now where, as opposed to kind of during the 2010s, where you had kind of a handful of dedicated artists, people like Steven Wilson and Bruce Soord, who would release new music on Blu-ray. And there were occasional archival reissues and box sets of albums with new 5.1 or Atmos
Of
mixes.
mega albums mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So now it's kind of strange where practically every new album from both like major and indie labels comes out with an Atmos mix. Granted, not all of them are good, but pretty much every album comes out in Atmos now concurrently with stereo. But the mixes go straight to the streaming services.
Right.
And granted, as you know, there are more and more Blu-rays being released every year. You have what Paul at Super Deluxe Edition is doing. Rhino is starting to do standalone reissues. But for the most part, still like maybe 95% of all new Atmos mixes are released to streaming. And I don't think that's ever something that's kind of happened in the history of music before, where there's been a format that you can't actually buy. Because if you think about if you want to buy a new record today, for the last like at least decade or so, it's always been possible to get some kind of permanent download, whether it's from a site like Bandcamp or like a more audiophile kind of service like HD Tracks or Qobuz, where you could buy a 9624 stereo file. So nothing like that has ever really existed for multi-channel, like on a large scale. There have been sort of isolated attempts at doing it. Like you may remember about 10 years ago now, Bruce Soord's first solo album was released as a 5.1 download, I think through the Burning Shed site.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I
They never,
downloaded it because I wanted the lossless upgrade to, well, actually, that was the only way he offered it.
yes.
There was no DVD even of it, and it was a promotion that if you had bought the CD, you could download the 5.1 lossless album, probably FLAC at the time. And then what that jogged my memory that subsequently he has put out his solo albums in DVD video, which have incredible 5.1 mixes, but they're lossy. And so I have also used Immersive Audio Album to like upgrade albums to lossless, if I really like the surround mix well enough.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of his albums, I would argue the even more exciting prospect of getting those for the site was not even that it's going from lossy to lossless, it's that they were out of print. Like his second solo record, it's called All This Will Be Yours. It was released in like one of those yearbook things.
Yeah,
like
I've got that.
Yeah. I think the yearbook went out of print after about a year or so. And when things go out of print, you end up going on eBay and there's the eBay profiteers that charge for stuff. So right now, you can go on Immersive Audio Album. You can buy the 5.1 FLACs high res of that record for, I think, like $15, maybe $20, something like that. So it's cheaper than the original, deluxe edition. Probably would have been at least 40 or $50. But anyway, like the idea behind the site really overall is I'm going around sort of approaching people who have spent the money to do an Atmos mix for streaming. And I think it's, especially for an indie artist, it's kind of a tough ask to ask them to do an Atmos mix because there's really no way you could make back the money you spent on it because there's no way to sell the mix. It just goes to streaming. I mean, the major labels can do Blu-rays, but for, smaller unsigned artists, you have to be really passionate to want to do a Blu-ray.
Sure.
So I'll approach people, I'll go on their social media or I'll contact their management. It could be anyone from unsigned artists to labels. And I'll approach them with this idea where if you let us license your Atmos mix and sell it on our site, we split the revenue with you. So every time somebody buys an album on Immersive Audio Album, the artist gets 80% of the sale and we keep 20%. And we've just sort of been slowly building from there. And the cool thing for me is just discovering like how much stuff has been mixed in Atmos. I mean, I spend a lot of my days just perusing Apple Music looking for interesting stuff. And
Same.
I don't think like anyone realizes the size of the catalog. It's massive.
It's massive. Yeah. And
Yeah.
some of my favorite Atmos albums right now are streaming only. So I wanted to
Yes.
take a second to like step back and, approach this topic from like, the 10,000 foot view. Historically, we've had either physical formats that surroundophiles could, invest in, DVD, Super Audio CD, Blu-ray, among some others, for digital, and then vinyl, of course, as well for quad.
Mm.
And then you have streaming, which has kind of been a direct competitor to, Blu-ray. Atmos, like it's this question. There's always this question that I see online and in comments for my videos. Like, is the Blu-ray really that much better than streaming? And it's like, well, yeah, if you care about definition in your music and like, some details are getting kind of lost, and yeah, it makes an immersive experience a murky one. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm usually going to prefer the Blu-ray, especially, for certain kinds of music. I want detail, and especially in the lower end. That's where I find streaming lacking. And so then you have this third option for download where, you're bypassing the need to press a Blu-ray, which may be too big of a hurdle for a lot of labels or artists. But they can still put their multi-channel mix all the way up to Atmos if they want to, out in a lossless format. And the customer can actually own the product as long as they back it up sufficiently. They're going to have, those ones and zeros. It's not on some server where it can be taken down. I've heard from friends where
Exactly.
they went to look for an Atmos mix they really loved on Apple Music and it had been taken down. I'm a fan of, music lovers being able to own their music if they want to, and to listen to it in the highest quality possible if they choose to. And I don't drink all the snake oil, with like super high resolution and everything. I think there's a limit to where like your ear just can't tell the difference anymore. But not talking about like the difference between 48K and 96 or something, but just to be able to have it lossless, where some algorithm didn't throw out information to make the file smaller so that it could be streamed, where you at least have all the information, when the mixing engineer went and saved the session down to, Atmos files. Like, I want to be able to hear all that information. And, I believe that listeners should be able to if they want to. So that's one reason why I definitely want more people to know about the download option, because there could be people who just feel exactly the same. Like they prefer to own a copy of what they purchase instead of like constantly having subscriptions to everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it. For me, it's about two things. It's about high quality audio and it's about ownership. So not only is there, a sonic difference, and I believe like you that it is appreciable. I mean, I'm of the opinion like that some of the lossy formats, like the 2496 DTS that they use for like the Jethro Tull and Ultravox discs, I I would be surprised if that sounds different than the lossless version. Those DVDs sound great to me, probably because the mixes are great. But with the streaming versus high res Atmos, there is an appreciable difference.
Well, and the downgrade in file size is dramatic.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of cases, the Atmos master files, the master format that the engineer exports is something called an ADM file, where essentially like all the beds and objects are stored as separate tracks. So if the engineer used, 100 objects, it would be in a 100 channel file. So those files are huge. But when you encode to the lossy format, it's a 20 times reduction. So a 10 gig file would only be 100 meg. So yeah,
That's
I mean to
incredible.
throw out that much, yeah, it throws out a lot. Whereas the Dolby True HD version is also much smaller. I think it's a 10 times reduction instead of 20. So it is significantly smaller, but if you A B them, and I don't think you can tell the difference.
Okay, so for viewers who are interested in this idea and perhaps haven't checked out the site yet, what are like your top 10 album recommendations that they should go take a peek at?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Well, one that you mentioned right off the bat is the new Alison Krauss and Union Station album, Arcadia, which sort of came out of happenstance with this label with a distribution service called Acceleration Music that we had partnered with. Originally, or the only album we had expected to get from them was Ray Charles's Genius Loves Company,
Which came out
which,
on DVD video a while back, Monster Music, the same one, or
yeah, it came out. There was a 5.1 mix done by Al Schmidt, who's like an industry legend.
yeah.
He worked at Capitol Studios. So that was done when the record came out, I think in 2004.
It was
And
like it was a monster super disc.
there's also an SACD,
Oh,
but
okay.
they use the same mix.
Oh,
And then
gotcha.
for the 20th anniversary, they went back and remixed it into Atmos. The Atmos mix was done by a guy called Eric Schilling,
Okay, so
and
we
it was
have a new Atmos mix of it.
yep. So the Atmos mix was done for streaming, and the Atmos mix I would say is a lot more adventurous than the previous 5.1. Like there's a lot of separation. Guitar is very isolated, and the side speakers. There's a song with like a Billy Preston organ solo where the organ is all the way in the back. So it's a very good mix. So yeah, that's another album I would recommend. The Alison Krauss and Union Station record, as you can attest, is a great sounding mix.
I just heard it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
dazzling.
One of the cool things about that one is they had also commissioned these like motion graphic videos to go with the songs. Kind of like not exactly a music video, but like these animated sort of you see the words on the screen of the lyrics.
Yeah, so it was a lyric video and it's kind of in like old-timey where my son asked what was wrong with our TV and I told him, "Hey, they're emulating what it would look like to shoot like a primitive moving picture back in the day." I told him about the hand cranks and everything. And we went into photography and it was a great conversation and it was from, he and I sitting down and listening to the new Alison Krauss and Union Station together. He's only 8 years old, but he's already into the whole multi-channel thing. Like it's really cool to see his interest developing.
Gotta start them young. But one of the cool things about the MKV files, which is the format we use for true HD Atmos, it's kind of like an open source audio and video container. And you can store, multiple audio streams like a Blu-ray. So we mentioned like it's staggered, so you could select either full Atmos or binaural.
Okay.
But it also supports video. So in a lot of cases, I think, as you know from listening to audio Blu-rays over the years, a lot of times the record companies don't really take advantage of like the video side of Blu-ray. Like a lot of times you see these like looping animations or things.
Or you'll
Sometimes it's
just
just
look at
like
the main menu the whole time.
yeah, you just look at the main menu or it's like a slideshow of the same images that repeats over the whole album.
Yep.
So in most cases, the IAA files just have like a static image, like you see the album cover and a track list, kind of like it's a
Sure.
Blu-ray.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, artists are able to give us music videos, which we can sync up with the Atmos files. So that really sort of gives it the whole like it's like you're getting a Blu-ray, like the
So that's
full
sometimes
audio
a
visual.
bonus that you can run into.
Yeah.
All right, so we've mentioned two albums that you would check out. Let's do a few more for the viewers here.
The latest Spoon album, Lucifer on the Sofa, one of the best, probably like straight ahead rock mixes I've heard. Just really good. The Church's latest album, the Hypnogogue. The Church, a lot of people might know like their records from the 80s, like what's that album called that has their hits? The Under the Milky Way is the song it's called Starfish, that record. But they released a new album in 2023 called the Hypnagogue. I would call it like prog rock, psychedelic. That's a really good mix. It was mixed by a guy called Daryl Thorpe. There's all the various Snapper K-Scope albums. So I think just about everything Bruce Soord has done for the Snapper family of labels is on IA. So that includes the various Catatonia albums that were released on DVD or DVD-A. So like The Great Cold Distance, Night is the New Day, Ball of Hearts. Um, Bruce's latest solo album, Luminescence, it was so in the case of this particular album, he did both a 5.1 and an Atmos mix. but the physical edition included a DVD, so they weren't able to release the Atmos mix physically. So the high res Atmos mix is exclusive to IAA. Otherwise, it would have just ended up on streaming services. So that's definitely one I highly recommend. It's a beautiful record. If you've heard it, it has like strings on it to accompany his voice. Really good. Um, Man, there's so many. One of my favorite labels we work with is this small jazz label based out of Toronto called Alma Records. Probably their biggest act is a band called Monkey House, which I would say their music is heavily inspired by Steely Dan. You know, the like backup singers and horns, super slick production. Um, their latest album that just came out, it's called Crashbox. It was released a couple weeks ago. Probably one of the best sounding Atmos mixes I've ever heard. It's very much akin to continue the Steely Dan comparison, like those old Steely Dan records that were mixed to 5-1 by Elliot Scheiner. You know, there's lots of horns in the back, backing vocals, organ, guitar, percussion in the height speakers.
Some of my favorite jazz multi-channel mixes of recent years have been like the Big Fat Band.
Mm.
So it jazz can definitely be absolutely immersive with meaningfully placed instruments and well engaging. So I love to shout out some jazz every now and then. I know I tend to focus on like rock and
Yeah,
pop
yeah.
music on this channel, but I love and listen to a lot of jazz. So nice to know that it's there. So now people know that immersiveaudioalbum.com exists and what it is, some of the titles that are available, and may be intrigued to go take a look for themselves. And not everybody viewing this video may be set up to download and properly play these videos. And so people watching are going to have some interest in 5.1. Some people are going to have exclusive interest in Atmos. So sort of like all the way from like 5.1 to playing Atmos, can you just give people a rundown of what they need to be able to download and play this stuff back?
Well, I would say kind of the easiest thing right off the bat is a lot of Blu-ray players naturally support these formats. So, you know, FLAC for 5.1, MKV for Atmos. Not all of them do, unfortunately, as
Yeah,
you
like my
found.
Sony X800 does support 5.1 FLAC, but doesn't know what to do with the MKV. And then my Oppo BDP 103, I have been able to get to work with MKV off of a thumb drive. And that works fine as long as I, tinker through and all the settings are right. But it definitely does work. And going in through the video section, the movies section instead of the audio section is one pitfall that a lot of viewers could avoid right off the bat. So
Yeah,
when you use USB through your Oppo, go into the movies section, and then you'll be able to play the MKV albums.
yeah. I mean, I think as you know from kind of interacting with people on the Quadraphonic Quad board and elsewhere on the internet, there are kind of various, different branches within our community. Like there are some people who are very tech savvy, who have all their discs backed up on like a network drive and they only play
Yes,
files. And then there are some people who like their discs and they just play discs.
right.
So there's kind of all these different, levels of knowledge.
So
I
folks
would
with
say,
network
yeah,
attached storage are probably going to just be able to download these files and just play them right off the bat because they're used to playing files all the time anyway.
yes.
Then you're going to have people like me who are mainly Blu-ray player based and want to just make these files work with their Blu-ray player. And then there are also devices that are just meant for streaming that might work with these.
So, say like you're in the position where you have a Blu-ray player that won't play these files for whatever
Yeah.
reason. There's a variety of companies that make like these standalone HDMI players that accept a USB or SD card, some kind of external storage. Some of them can even read files off network attached storage if you want to get, fancier with it.
Okay.
But the cheapest one I found, and I credit Ryan Elliot for turning me on to this, is there's a little box you can buy on Amazon by a company called Neumi. It's literally just like a little dongle. I don't happen to have mine on me at the moment, but it's a small dongle that has a USB input on the front. and it has an HDMI port on the other side. And you can just plug it like into your AV receiver. Or if you don't have an AV receiver, you can plug it into like your Sonos soundbar, any of those like sort of simpler, compact Atmos systems. I know a lot of people are listening with those, and I've heard a like Sonos system with rear speakers. They sound great. And the thing has like a rudimentary menu where you could cycle through music, videos, photos, and that will play the MKV files with True HD. So I believe the asking price for that on Amazon is like $40 or $50. So it's a very easy way to get started.
Yeah, low barrier to get started. All right, well, that's cool. So I want to just recap for everybody now that we have discussed immersiveaudioalbum.com, what it is. We've discussed that there are A-list artists already up on there, mixed by A-list mixers in full lossless quality that you can own. That is why I wanted to take some time to just let everyone know, because I know I mostly talk about physical format because it's what I love. I'm a dinosaur, and I tolerate streaming, but it really rubs me the wrong way that I just can't own favorite albums and in full quality, nonetheless. So I appreciate you, Jonathan, taking some time to talk about the site, to share your knowledge and insights. And I just wanted to give you a few minutes to just impart to viewers anything else that you would like them to know, either about immersiveaudioalbum.com or just your love of multi-channel in general. Just go for it.
Well, I mean, I love physical too, as you could see. So, but I guess like what I would really leave people with is that in a lot of cases, I know I get a lot of like emails from people saying like, why can't you do like Blu-rays of X title? And I mean, like we said, the barrier to entry for Blu-ray is high. For better or for worse, well, for worse, there are a lot of albums that have Atmos mixed on streaming that will not be released on Blu-ray. And
Never.
these could be like very high-profile things. Like I think you just did a video on like the Metallica Load Reload. I doubt they're going to do a Blu-ray of that. They probably would have announced it already.
They would have already. So they have made a
Yeah,
calculation that it just doesn't make them money or something.
yeah. So the whole idea behind our site is what if you could serve the audience that like Blu-ray, but take away the cost of entry. So there's no need to like make back money that you spent creating the product. Like I'm sure in the case of, Super Deluxe Edition or Rhino or any of the other labels that are doing Blu-ray, they have to make a calculation on the titles they choose. So there may be some albums on streaming that have a great Atmos mix and it's great music, but they're not deemed, the investment is not worthwhile. They can only choose from a limited pool of titles, only, popular albums that they know people buy in physical media.
I already
So
have
what
an
we're,
extensive list
yeah,
of albums that I
hmm,
wish would come out on Blu-ray.
yeah. So we're doing our best to try to create this platform to serve people who want high res Atmos and make it more attractive to the artists and labels because there's no barrier to entry and our take is very low. And the other thing I would say is the more albums we sell, the easier it will be for us to get higher profile things. So, a lot of people write to me, it's like, well, why can't you like release why can't you release an Atmos download of X new record? And it's like, well, there's a whole process involved with that. We have to approach the label and we have to deal with the sort of distribution and licensing. So the bigger we're able to make our catalog, the more revenue we're able to generate, it will help us get those, higher profile gets.
I like it. Well, I appreciate your time, and I hope this video has been helpful and informational for everyone else. And I encourage you to go check out immersiveaudioalbum.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. And please feel free to comment and maybe make album requests. Do your thing. All of your support is appreciated. Thank you for viewing. And until next time, live life in surround.